Hi everyone, and now for your marine forecast issued on July 25th, 2023. This is meteorologist Joel Curtis with the National Weather Service in Anchorage. Starting out with our sea ice edge, the area of less than 80% of ice from about Wainwright to just short of Kaktovik. That area has a stream of broken up ice that's streaming from west toward the east in the Arctic Ocean current. Other than that, it's kind of broken up and has a few holes in it, and that's the briefing the sea ice forecaster gave for me. Should be retreating over the next few days. So let's take a look at today's weather. First of all, we've got quite a system out in the Bering Sea, 998 millibar for both of those low centers. The old one, which is up by St. Matthew Island, is dissipating, and the new one just north of the far western Aleutian. It's very slow to develop. It probably doesn't not going to deepen a whole lot more. We also have thermal low pressure over the northeastern interior. That's 1,007 millibars, and what we call a thermal trough across the central portion with lots and lots of thunderstorms, as we talked about in the other videos up there. 1,025 millibar high, that's south of Kodiak Island, well south, but that has got a little onshore push into southeastern Alaska and all along the North Gulf Coast. That area has marine stratus and fog and what we call a marine push going through the inner channels this afternoon and this evening, and should sock the area in a little bit. You might even see some drizzle. So on Wednesday, that thermal low pressure still remains right around the Fort Yukon area center, with a thermal trough across the state into Kotzebue Sound. And then we have, again, lots of thunderstorms predicted for the central interior. Let's take a look at what that system in the Bering Sea has done. So it really has weakened a bit, and 1,002 millibars now up just west of St. Matthew Island. And it has a little bit of a trough extending down across Unimak Island into the far southwestern Gulf. The high pressure, however, has built south of the Gulf 1,030 for continued onshore flow for the North Gulf Coast and for the Panhandle. And then looking at Thursday's weather, again, thermal low pressure right about the Aleutian or so, 1,013 millibars to thunderstorms inland. But we have that 1,008 millibar low now past St. Matthew Island. And a new developer, about 1,013, still a pretty weak system with a little bit of cold air behind it, a little bit of warm air out in front of it. And then we have that high pressure continues. It's just built even a little bit more now south of the Gulf of Alaska, and still causing that onshore flow all along the North Gulf Coast and onto the Panhandle. So now let's look at some specific marine forecasts. First, starting out for southeast Alaska, pretty light winds offshore, 5 to 10 knots, seas up to 5 feet. Some of that is a westerly swell. And then on the inside waters, 10 to 15 knots, seas around 2 feet or so. And then for Thursday, the wind 10 knots, still pretty light, and hard to pin down a direction in southeast and the inside waters there. Seas around 2 feet, but notice that the northwesterlies are now starting to kick in, 15 to 20 knots, and seas up to 6 feet when you get down close to Cape Omni or off of Prince of Wales Island. And then for south central waters, first of all, we have fairly light winds on Wednesday out on the outside, 15 knots off of Kennedy Entrance, but generally 2 to 3 foot seas, 10 knots in Prince William Sound. And then as we look at Cook Inlet, again, like we were thinking yesterday, probably a southerly wind, about 15 knots or so. Seas up to 4 feet down off of Augustine Island, otherwise about 3 to 4 feet, and for the rest of Cook Inlet. And then for Cook Inlet on Thursday, we've got 10 to 15 knots again, seas around 3 feet, not a whole lot of fetch. But in the outside waters, look at how light and variable that is. You have to go all the way over to Cape Suckling before you got that 15-knot westerlies. Seas around 2 feet and 10 knots in Prince William Sound. Now looking at the Alaska Peninsula, let's first look at the Bering Sea side. Winds ranging 10 to 20 knots, seas up to 3 feet. And then for the Pacific side, Shelikof Strait blowing southwesterly 20 and seas up to 5 feet there. Otherwise, 10 to 15 knots and seas around 3 feet for the Gulf side. And then for Thursday on the Bering Sea side, 10 to 15 knots, seas up to 3 feet. Not a lot of fetch there for your wind waves. But then as you get down to the Gulf side, really light and variable wind. Seas around 3 feet, which is probably some remnants of a swell coming from someplace. So now let's take a look at the marine forecast for the Aleutian chain. First of all, generally westerlies and as you get further east, southerly direction, but wind ranging 15 to 25 knots. For the Pacific side, looking at a maximum sea of about 7 feet or so. For the Bering Sea side, generally 4s and 5s, 5-foot seas. And then for Thursday, on the Bering Sea side, westerly 15 for the far western Aleutian, seas 4 feet. Otherwise, pretty light, 10 knots as that low continues to weaken that's in the Bering Sea. And then 10 knots, except for about 15-knot westerly out by the western Aleutians on the Pacific side, seas up to 4 feet there. Again, remnants of some sort of swell. And then for Wednesday, for the West Coast, winds about 20 knots or so, seas up to 7 feet for the Pribilof, 6 feet for St. Matthew Island, but otherwise not a lot of fetch for the rest of the West Coast, southwestern coast there. Got about 4 feet off of Hooper Bay, otherwise than that 2 to 4 foot range on them. And then for Thursday, we've got 10 to 15 knots, 10 knots down in Bristol Bay, otherwise 15 knots. Some westerly component starting to work its way in, but generally southerly winds and seas around 3 feet. And then for the Arctic coast on Wednesday, we've got easterly winds 10 to 15 knots for the Beaufort Sea. As you get over the Chukchi Sea, 10 to 15 knots, seas up to 3 feet, again for ice-free waters. And then as you get down to the Bering Strait, we've got about 20 knots and seas 4 feet with an easterly component of wind. And then for Thursday, again, easterlies along the north slope, 10 to 15 knots. As you get down into the Chukchi, about 15 knots, seas 3 feet, and then 15 to 20 knots down for the Bering Strait, seas up to 4 feet. Well, folks, that's it. Please stay safe out there. Be sure and file a float plan, and thank you very much for tuning in.